vacation, all that. But some people are still here. I can see on the line that are actually out doing stuff, and yet they're here with us today. So that's very cool. So for whatever it's worth, this is great. We'll get together today and start the show. I didn't print out my agenda, but I don't think it was anything. It was pretty open session, and because there's a low number of participants, it'd be great. We could get latest updates from everybody here. I think I may go directly to that. One person who was supposed to be on earlier today, I'm sorry, on the agenda today, Ben Weston is actually may try to come in video, but he can't give his presentation. He was going to talk about, should we actually do chest compressions during circulatory arrest after trauma? Because the people who are most salvageable will probably have something that's reversible, like potential, like tension pneumothorax or pericardial tamponade or whatever, or they're exsanguinated. And so then, where does chest compressions come in on that? So it's kind of an interesting and a good question. So, and I think I don't see Corey on. Corey has actually studied that in the past. And so that was one of the things, but we'll do that in the new year. But the first thing I do want to mention is can everybody hear me okay, by the way, before I start rambling on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Yep. All right, so good. And by the way, Merry Christmas to everybody, and Hanukkah just ended as well. And so I hope you all had a great time. Glenn, can I mention that you guys were double dipping up there in New York? Is that right?
Yeah.
Can I tell him why?
Sure.
Just drop that.
No, that's fine.
Okay, got it. No, he has his family is great because he gets to do both sides of the fence, so to speak, right from the cradle to the dreidel. It's really good. So good for you, Glenn. By the way, Glenn, thank you again for helping out. Glenn helped out with one of my dear friends who's the head of security for Live Nation, in Europe, and did a fantastic job of helping out with a bad illness, especially with his kid. So Glenn just comes through. He's the most amazing human being, and he just gets it done, and he's there around the clock. So I cannot thank you enough. And this is not the first time I've had to ask him for stuff, and he's just always there. So one of my greatest expressions of gratitude is to you, Glenn, and for all the work you've done. How many years have you been now with FDNY, and how long have you been the chief medical officer there?
This is my 25th year now, and I've been the chief medical director now 10 years.
Wow. Okay, got it. Well, fantastic. So, and then let's see, I'm trying to see if we have any other elders, but so 25 years. David, what are you hitting on now, right? David Purse.
Yeah, I'm pushing about 27, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And you've always been the chief medical director there during that period of time. So that's good. All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk to you guys. So first note, before I go to David, I do want to again remind everybody that next week we are going to go to we are going to be going to the afternoon session, so to speak, for those in the East Coast. And it'll be we're looking at 3:30, 2:30 Central, et cetera, and then 12:30 Pacific. I've gotten tons of notes saying this is a much better thing. There's so many people that have standing meetings in the morning that they couldn't make it on. I was unaware of that, but as I started calling people over the year, and so people like Jeff Goodlow, who we really miss. He's so good. We'll be able to get on now, and various other people that wrote to me. So fantastic. So it's good. David, will that be okay for you as well? Because I think I've asked everybody here on this call if that was going to work out. It's good. All right, fantastic. You're always a fantastic contributor and done such a great job. And you guys are both very humble people, as a matter of fact, who have just accomplished so much and been great leaders. So thank you so much. So David, what's going on in Houston? Anything good?
There's always something good going on in Houston. You could vacation here regularly.
Yes. Okay.
But really, not much. Our COVID situation continues to creep up, but the hospitals seem to be tolerating it well. We did just have a freeze here, which is, our homes are not constructed for that, but no loss of power. So nothing really terrible. The hospitals are full and they're arguing and the usual sort of stuff. So really nothing big to report here.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that, you were lucky because a lot of other people got really terrible weather and terrible situations obviously around the corner. Your old stomping grounds was Buffalo, right? So what can you report on? Do you have friends there and you have acquaintances, or what do you know about Buffalo?
So they broke a record. They had 37 straight hours of blizzard, which apparently sets a new record. And Sandy, you probably are experiencing a little bit of this too. Over 100 inches of snow, so that's more than 8 feet of snow. 37 deaths as of this morning. And fortunately, my family members, to the best of my knowledge, are all okay. I did have a cousin die, but that was before the storm. It had nothing to do with the storm.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like they're getting beat up pretty badly there. And there's reports of looting. And the one report I saw in the national news, they were talking about people trying to get food, but the looting was for a liquor store. So that was probably a medicinal and therapeutic looting.
Yeah.
That should not be prosecuted.
Yeah, it was difficult getting hold of their PCPs, and the pharmacies, right, were all closed. Right. Okay, I get it.
Anyways, that's what I know.
Hey, but David, the reason why I brought this up, and I don't see any of the folks, for example, some of you can give reports from what's happening in your local areas, but I'll give you an example. From what I understand, yesterday or the day before in Atlanta, for example, that's why I was looking for Letchby. The fire department normally would maybe go out for 6 fire calls a day, or I don't know what the number was, but it went up like tenfold. Like, I think maybe it was 60 to 600 or something like that calls. And then I try to ask, what were they? Were they fires? And they were fires that were caused by various, whether breaches of this or that caused a fire, or people doing accidental things, causing them. And then, those things we see down here in Texas a lot are people try to have, what's the best way of putting it? Improvised heating systems, and then, or they catch fire on too close to certain, those internal heaters go on, or they hadn't had their furnaces checked out for a while and they're making only orange flame, not blue flame. So carbon monoxide, all those kinds of things that we saw a lot in the past. And but there's a lot of other things but the main thing is that the fire departments are often called up for pipe bursting to turn off the water systems and all those in those areas, and that was a large part of what they did. Did anybody there out there on the call today experience any of that themselves in their areas, and what were we seeing? And nobody saw anything.
I'll help you, Paul. So, in Houston, we did see an increase. It wasn't tenfold. It was maybe a 10 or 15% increase. But like you pointed out, it was predominantly fire calls. Most of them were small. We had 2 apartment fires. We had one that went to 3 alarms, but nothing, horrible or devastating. And yeah, a lot of the water alarms going off. So just exactly what you described. But here in Houston, it only went up maybe 10%.
Okay, got it. And then Josh, I don't know if you've been monitoring that since you're up in the snow belt there yourself. What have you been hearing, Josh Hartman?
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's finally, I don't know that we'll hit freezing today in the upward trajectory. I think we're still well below freezing in the 20s, but at least we in the New York and New Jersey area definitely got spared with the precipitation in coordination with the freezing. So we've definitely had our challenge with the a-domicile population in the low temperatures and getting them to
get the good one for me. Thank you.
warm places. But we did not get any sort of significant precipitation, just a lot of ice on the roads and buildings with pipes breaking, putting ice on the streets, making it slippery, et cetera. But thankfully, we didn't have too much precipitation, just a lot of freezing temperatures here.
Okay, let me just run around the horn. Rob, done anything for you?
Kind of similar to that. I mean, we had a lot of very cold temperatures, below 0 temperatures. We did not get a lot of snow in this part of Michigan. The west part of Michigan, which typically gets a lot of snow, did get quite a bit. Although it's interesting you're talking about fires. We had very high winds. We had 50+ mile an hour winds, and we had the first 4-alarm fire that we've had in a long time. Fortunately, it was in unoccupied structures.
Yeah.
But it was pretty spectacular. If you Google it, I mean, you could see like all the trees around the site burning, as well as some of the telephone poles and other things. that were on fire, and it caused some power loss for that part of the city. No injuries, but it it was quite a challenge to fight. It was 2 degrees above zero and gusts of up to 50 miles an hour.
Ah, okay. How about your a domicile people? I like that term. Did you have a big issue or?
Yeah, I mean, we had previously, I mean, there was a lot of hype about this storm coming, and particularly the low temperatures, which means that we turn up the, if you will, turn up the heat, if you will, on the outreach, and made sure that all of our, we maxed out all of our shelter capacity. We opened some of our backup shelters. We worked with all the hospitals on, to have discharge options and transportation available for people that needed to get to a shelter who were just showing up at hospitals to get warm. And that because of the variability in the weather here is something that actually works pretty well. And actually, we learned a lot of good lessons during the pandemic because of it.
So do you get a lake effect there, like Cleveland does on Erie?
No, we're kind of the other side, right? We're getting primarily west winds that have already crossed Michigan, dumped all their precipitation, and then get to us as a lot of cold and some bit of snow. But unless we're getting something coming straight from the north down Lake Huron, we don't really get any lake effect, and that's pretty rare. We'll get those once in a while, the coming. Now, I grew up in Rochester, New York, so it's nothing like that
I'm
here.
in a position to do a quantity of snow, man. Right. That's true. That's okay. Fantastic. I didn't know you were from there.
Yeah.
Sandy Schneider lived there for a long time. Yeah, it's great. So Sandy, have you heard anything from friends up there? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so Rochester kind of said, yeah, okay, so we got snow. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
The people from Buffalo, the best quote I heard was something like, we only got 3 feet of snow. However, we had drifts that went as high as 8 feet.
Wow.
So the first part of that phrase is very important. We only got 3 feet.
Yeah.
So 3 feet of snow in Rochester would have been a bad one, but not exactly exciting. We might have had to, they certainly wouldn't have canceled school. So for only 3 feet of snow. But luckily I am back. I am now down in Dallas where, 3 millimeters of snow is devastating. And as opposed to 3 feet. I just returned home from Germany. We took a vacation, and it was the first time I had to put on like the heavy duds for several years. I actually put on long underwear, and I was like, oh my God, I can hear this a lot,
Good imagery. Thank you.
It was awful.
That's pretty funny. Well, any of that, let me just, since we're down in Texas, let me jump over to Jeff Jarvis, because Jeff, you guys had a deep freeze there down in Texas. Say down in Texas where I am right now. But you and I talked about that time about the kind of things that you run across, especially in areas that are used to 3 feet of snow. What were the kind of stuff that we ran across, particularly last year? And I was curious to know what you dealt with this year. So.
Yeah, Paul, so this year was actually, we were blessed. It got cold, about 9 degrees, and I hear half of the call right now rolling their eyes and saying, oh, geez, Texan. But for us, that's really chilly. But fortunately, it was dry. We had intermittent power outages, but nothing like we had last year. Last year, the problem was we had precipitation. And we just absolutely, like Sandy said, we have no clue what to do with that. Our windmills froze up. Our power distribution system froze up. And boy, it was ugly for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
This time it was cold. It was a problem for folks who are, as you say, adomiciliated. But really it was short and not bad. It's about 40 degrees here right now.
Yeah. So Jeff, one of the things that there were several things we found because the power went out is a really a critical aspect of all that. And we're seeing that across the South and all that. And then one of the things was that there was a thing with the dialysis machines. People were doing home dialysis. There were people were on oxygen tanks that that were automated oxygen, delivery systems, right?
Right.
You dealt with
that
had to prepare for. but and then you had carbon monoxide, right? That came up here and there.
Sure.
And so on.
Yeah, we had lots of that. Interestingly, we gave cyanokit because we thought it worked on carbon monoxide. So little educational opportunities. So we had, you mentioned the freeze, a big issue for us, dialysis. People couldn't get into, people who worked at the dialysis centers couldn't get into them to turn them on. Patients couldn't get there. And then even if you could get there, they couldn't get the dialysate or have the power to run the dialysis machines. So everybody basically just ended up in the emergency department, and then they had no way to discharge them. We had quite a few EMS calls just for nothing other than people with home oxygen concentrators who couldn't concentrate anymore. Yeah, quite the challenge.
And that was one of the reasons I'm bringing it up is the case if you hadn't been through this, or you do have it, or even if you've been through this and you live in Rochester, it's still going to be a problem that people have to be aware of. But the second thing I really wanted you to bring up was that, especially what they did in Fort Worth, and you're kind of where you are now, was actually have the doctors go down to the dispatch center sometimes. That's what they did during COVID. So just talk about that, because it may be part of it. If you're a medical director, you may want to make sure you think about this proactively about having a plan for such a thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did it in Williamson County. Veer did it up here in Fort Worth. So we basically inserted ourselves into the priority dispatch. Priority dispatch kind of falls apart a little bit because they assume that you'll have resources available. And the situation we had is there are no resources available, and we don't plan on having them available for the next, not just hours, but sometimes days. So we would put physicians in dispatch and just do advanced triage. And it's not just we're not going to get to you until we get to these other people. It's, I'm sorry, we're not going to get to you at all. You need to make other plans.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Or winging it on the fly. Yeah, I'm going to transport this patient in an engine company. The way we would do it in Texas, things are a lot easier in Texas. But we would just have the fire crew officially get a refusal on the patient so that we would stay out of regulatory issues, and then offer them a courtesy ride in the engine to wherever we needed to get them to.
Yeah. Yep. So I brought that up for a couple of reasons, just it's kind of a little bit off track here, but on purpose, is that we got to have, so I think it's important to know about that potential option and/or, and David Miramontes is almost doing it on a day-to-day basis as an example, and others. But the reason why I brought it up was that during the COVID, they announced it on February 21st in Milan, the first case in Europe, and everybody went nuts. Their call volume just went off the charts. So they went down and tried to do a triage thing. And they had not only had the doctors from their trauma center going in there, but they also had the public health officials going there, and they set up a room there, and that helped it. When we were writing the paper, though, what was interesting about it, it brought to mind that people were calling because they were worried well. And they said, what do I have? They didn't know. So it's reminiscent of that time when remember there was a birthday party where there was some radiological thing that went off and down in South America, down in Brazil. And next thing you know is 1,000, million people were calling in or coming up to the emergency department, that kind of thing. It was just like, so I don't know what the exact numbers were, but it was just absurd number of things. So we need to have preparedness. So for example, if the dirty bomb does go off or whatever it is, we need to have a plan B, so to speak, for those particular circumstances, preparing for the worried well and all that under those circumstances, some system of care. All right, well.
Yep. Hey, Paul, there is one other thing that I'd like to add in.
Sure.
Just like our colleagues in Colorado had the legislators decide that they knew better than they did how to practice medicine.
Yeah, true.
We had a little episode of that. We're not even lawyers, so why should we talk about practicing medicine? Obviously, we don't know best.
Yeah.
So we had that here with the as a result of this dialysis fiasco. We had a well-meaning legislator basically insert some language into our code that said if you are an EMS system in a state of disaster, you have to have something in your protocols that prioritizes the transport of dialysis patients to dialysis centers.
Hmm.
And that's all it said. And, you know, the challenge to that obviously is we see a lot of other patients, and prioritizes dialysis patients
Yeah.
could certainly be, you know, interpreted to mean you have to take care of those dialysis patients above all of the other patients
Right.
with chest pain or strokes or gunshot wounds.
Yeah.
So fortunately, we were able to come up with some language that fit the letter of the law and was basically did nothing.
Yeah.
It didn't actually change anything, but we complied with the law.
That's interesting. And actually was interesting is that David, I think you probably had the same experience as we had here in Dallas. When people were evacuating from Katrina, it was like the psychotic patients and the dialysis patients seemed to do pretty well. You know, was that your experience as well? David, I don't know if David, I caught you. David may be off. It looks like he
Oh,
maybe.
sure.
Yeah.
I was self-muted.
Yeah.
Yeah. That they, you know, they've got some street smarts, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Which is really funny. But okay, so let's jump up to the lake, another lake on the other side in Milwaukee. Do you have the same issue that you don't have lake effects there in Milwaukee? Ben, I think you're on the phone, I believe. We'll see.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Hey, yeah, we do get lake effect. We didn't get hit too bad. We had probably about maybe 6 inches of snow, really cold temperatures, down to 10, 15 below, with chills down to negative 30s or 40s. So it's more about the cold than the snow.
Okay, got it. Let's jump over real quickly to see what happened in Baltimore and Philadelphia, and we'll go back to New York just to wrap this thing up. Anything, Ben, that you could report of anything new besides maybe the harbor freezing, right?
Yeah, that'd be bad if it froze. It'd be difficult to find the bodies that are in there for a little bit. So we'll see. But you know, it's pretty much status quo. I have to say the hospital situation it still persists and gets to be rather untenable at times, especially with, you know, the ED wait times and the lack of surge capacity. So
Yes.
that is something that has had the state's attention, which, you know, continues to be a discussion. It's interesting in talking about this blizzard, we or the snow weather, just in terms of in recent memory, during the blizzard that was, I think, several years ago, we actually had to deploy the National Guard. One of the most effective deployments, or ask assistance in them, they were actually engaged in transporting dialysis patients via Humvees, because at that point they activated Blue Alert, which just meant that everybody would go to the closest hospital, irrespective of specialty, criteria, or destination. So it's interesting to keep in mind those contingency plans. But otherwise, similar challenges.
Yeah, but actually, I remember being up there. It must have been for an EMS meeting or something, because Peter, Antovi, and I were staying over there at the Hyatt at the harbor, and it actually froze during that period of time. It was fascinating to see that.
Yeah,
So that lake effect, right? Okay, it's really kind of okay. How about Philadelphia? Anything new to report? But anything else, Ben, going on besides that? Okay.
No,
Anything?
thanks.
Okay, good. Philadelphia, let's go up 95 up the roadways if it's open, right?
Pretty much this. I mean, we've had some chilly weather like everyone else, nothing compared to what the folks up north have gotten. I take public transportation, which sort of makes me an outlier to begin with. And I was coming to my fire office today and looking at the Delaware River to see if it's frozen yet. Because
Yeah.
it does every now and then, but I didn't see any icebergs. So I guess that's a good sign.
Yeah. How would you be able to get your boat across the Delaware, right, to make an attack with George Washington if it froze up?
Well, that would be challenging. We'd have to consult George Washington or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the only other thing new in Philadelphia is nitazines have come to town. The synthetic opioids, which I guess some of the other cities have been dealing with over the past few years. Health department just put out an alert just a week or so ago saying they have arrived in Philadelphia and are 40 times more powerful than fentanyl. So just one more thing to mix in our brew.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Oh, yeah. And so what is it again? But that's 40 times more powerful.
They're nitazines. I'll send out like the health
Yeah.
department.
Yeah. Because I'm not familiar with it. So that's new for me. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of the northern and eastern states and Southwest have seen it over the past couple of years, but
Okay.
just one more active ingredient to add to our drugs.
Angus, you've seen everything down there in the Tampa area. Have you seen that as well? If I caught Angus off guard there.
Hey, sorry, just got back to my desk. I had to step away, but yeah, we've been having nitazines for a while here. We've got all the things here.
Okay, I know. That's why I went back to you. And then we'll talk later about the NMSP meeting and what people should prepare for. I'll come back to you in a little while. All right. Well, thanks, Crawford, for that report. And as I assume that everybody's got a low-grade Eagles fever there, right? With them playing so well this year. So we'll see how it goes.
The weekend didn't go well, but otherwise, yes, I think so.
Oh, really? Did they lose this weekend? Wonder what team they could have lost to.
I wonder.
Yeah, right. All right. So then let's move over to Glenn up in New York. Glenn, what can you tell us about what's going on up there?
Yeah, for this past weekend with the holiday and the cold weather, our volume actually was lower than normal. Christmas Eve was under 4,200. And yesterday and Christmas Day, just under 4,100. So I'm sure that's not going to continue. This week, hopefully, it'll be slower as well. School is out, and we just continue to plug in. Today, since our 9-degree weather this past weekend, we had a heat wave. We're at 30 degrees, so we're very excited about that.
So that's amazing. So good for you. That's interesting. Now, did you see more tourists this year? That people come back because COVID's gone away now, right?
Yeah. I think we had high numbers again, some pre-COVID numbers, for the tree lighting and all that. So we had a lot of people.
Well, I mean, I got sensitized to that. I forgot about it. Then when I had my friends were coming over, that's why I was asking about that. So that's interesting. Okay, let's. I don't want to miss anybody too badly, but let's just jump over to the West Coast for fun. And then, David, what's happening in the Vancouver area?
We had similar weather for us. I think we got down in the Vancouver area to about 11 degrees Fahrenheit. We got some snow, but for a place that's not particularly used to dealing with it, that could cause some chaos. Actually, now we're switching gears to it's rain, and more rain. They have what they call an atmospheric river coming, so there's a flood watch for low-lying areas. So we'll see how that plays out. I think not in Vancouver specifically, but in the BC EHS world, in the interior region of the province, there was a big bus crash on Christmas Eve that was a rollover due to severe highway conditions. And that unfortunately resulted in 4 fatalities, but I think 53 were sent to hospitals, and that was divvied up between 3 different hospitals in the interior health region. They called a code orange. They had to bring in extra staff, and I think that was obviously a big challenge to respond to. So that was, I think, main piece that you may have heard about that.
Yeah. I didn't hear about it, but what was the age groupings there? Because I've been in a lot of those where there's deaths, where they were like elderly people going somewhere. But was there a mixture of people on that bus?
I don't have the specifics of age groupings, but I'm assuming most of them were adults. I don't think they were children, but I think it was mostly adults.
Okay, good. Hey, before I go down to John in Portland, I just wanted to go back to Crawford. Crawford, I heard the word, maybe you can confirm this for me, that I was waiting for Doug Kupas to get on, but I didn't see him here so far. But Doug is stepping down after 1990, it was 2000. Well, it's almost over 2 decades of being the medical director for the state, correct?
Yeah, the state issued an announcement about that last week, and I think it took effect December 20th. So they're currently looking for a new state medical director. But I don't want to, if Doug's going to pop on, I don't want to steal his thunder or anything.
Yeah, I didn't see him there. That's why I'm curious to know if anybody else, if we know if anybody else is in or what we were looking at that point in time,
But it's sad. It's going to be a big loss for us.
Yeah. So he was so good. He was when I was leaving that position, I told Peg and everybody there that in the secretary that was my first choice, and he's done a great job for you, right? As far as you know. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we'll find out more when he gets on next time. That. So Glenn and Rob, I left you out, Rob Holman, but I'll come right back to you. John, anything to report out of Portland?
No, it's very similar to what David had. We actually had severe icing for 2 days, fortunately, but we're sort of used to it here as well. Our major problem was actually EMS staffing. We're in the middle of flu and COVID right now, and our crews actually had trouble getting in. So we were in a little bit of trouble. We were triaging our Alpha and some of our Bravo calls in a delayed response here as well. Our medic actually called those lower acuity calls, and I served as backup, and that actually worked quite well here as well. And the other thing we actually did was we actually freed our fire department, who are usually first responders, into leaving the patient if they're stable, so they can go to water main pipes and down freeze here as well.
Right.
But we're actually in the windstorm right now. Hopefully I won't lose power.
Yeah, it's the worst. The winds have been terrible there over the last 5 or 10 years. It just you get those bombs. It's just something else, right? It's what's their name? Is it called a bomb cyclone or something like that? I can't remember what it's called, but you guys have been plagued by that quite a bit lately. So. All right, and then John, I may come back to you for infectious disease purposes later. I don't know if you had anything to report, but let me jump over to Rob Holman over, as I promised, over in Washington, D.C. Rob, what's happening on your end?
So we had a really, unlike New York, we had a very, very busy Christmas day. We had 699 calls, 125 for public assistance, just from the cold. At one point the day before, we had sufficient number of warming buses. However, we didn't have drivers for all of them. So someone was supposed to get these patients there. Lack of coordination.
25 public assistants. Were they people in homes, outside of homes, or what was this?
Actually don't know at this point. I'm going to try and find out. I think they were mostly from the persons experiencing homelessness, but
yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
All righty. And then otherwise, everything's generally okay there and all that. And things are operating. Okay, good. Great to see you. And always great to have you on. So thank you so much. And actually now I think you definitely hold the world's record, right, for being the medical director of Washington, D.C. What's your tenure been there?
In February, it'll be 7 years.
Wow, that's like, in dog years, like that's.
I know. And I think Dave held the record before me, and I think it was about 4.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's unheard of. There's something wrong up there.
We have stability and progress, and progress. We're making a lot of things are getting righted.
Good.
Say.
Well, give me an example if you don't mind. And Sandy, I will get to you, by the way. Sandy Schneider,
we're setting up a opioid response teams with a medic and a behavioral health funded community outreach specialist. We've really boosted our CQI team with a couple of data analysts, and they're able to look at exactly what we're doing. We're setting up a robust sobering center in March with DBH as the lead, fortunately. Those sort of things. And we have new Zoll monitors. We're improving our cardiac arrest response. So
good. All right, fantastic then. All righty, so let's go over first to Sandy Schneider, and then I'm going to hit John Kramer, just so you're aware, and then AJ, I may want you to talk about Bobby, so you could be prepared for that. So let's first start with Sandy Schneider out of ASAP.
Yeah, so I'd like to bring you up to date with a couple of things going on nationally. The first is, I think I talked a little bit about, we had sent a letter to the administration, to the president, asking for a summit regarding crowding and boarding, and we still have not heard from them, although We understand that the letter has been circulating around and basically everybody is saying, well, you know, important, but not my area. We will be having a summit regardless of whether the president or the administration does it. So just to put that on your radar. Some of you may have seen over the Christmas holidays a study that came out of AHRQ regarding diagnostic errors in the emergency department. The study is incredibly bad. I just going to say that there's a lot of flaws with it. ASEP has created had this reviewed with the other EM organizations. So basically the entire house of emergency, not EMS as much because you guys didn't get creamed the way we did. But we did create a response letter with all of the other organizations. I'm happy to try to attach that. I don't know if I can attach it to this, but probably I can. If anybody has an interest in that, let me know. Another thing is shortages. Some of you know that we chronically have shortages, but right now.
Sandy, just before you get on that last thing, there was a lot of chatter going back and forth on the chairs, lift serve and all that. Did they add anything to the conversation that you thought was adroit?
I don't think there was anything new that wasn't in the letter we hadn't considered. The methodology of the study is very flawed. It's based upon some old studies, very small studies, and studies that were done in European countries that have a very different system, that do not have emergency medicine training. And so you can't talk about, emergency departments in the United States and compare them to, the Canary Islands, which is where one of these studies was done. I mean, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
The study that is widely quoted that talks about the number of deaths, it's actually a Canadian study, again, slightly different system, but in that is a very small study. It was only a few hundred patients and one patient died. And that was from an unrecognized aortic dissection, which again is one of the toughest things. And from that, they extrapolate that the number of deaths associated with emergency department care is around the third largest cause of death in the United States. And you really can't extrapolate one death study as to any kind of national numbers.
Well, maybe this was their strategy to offload the emergency departments.
So several emergency physicians were involved in this. I think some of them had an idea that this would provide resources and needed things to emergency physicians, but I don't think that's the way it got interpreted. There were some other questions about potential conflicts of interest. And then the study was also reviewed by a number of emergency physicians. We understand, we don't have absolute proof of this, but we understand from them that basically none of their comments were incorporated into the final paper. So if you hear that so-and-so, Dr. So-and-so reviewed the paper, the answer is yes, they did. They made comments and they weren't adopted into that. So again, I'll try to put the response letter in the chat, but anybody can contact me and I'll send that to you.
All right, I'm sorry to have interrupted you, but I wanted to follow that. That's very helpful hearing what you just said. All that extra stuff is really, we need to be aware of that. Okay.
It's just, the study is just such seriously, the Canary Islands, it's not, does not have the same kind.
They have a lot of experience. They had a big plane crash there 30 years ago. Right?
And the other thing is, making a diagnosis is not necessarily what we do. We stabilize, we start the patient on their diagnostic journey, but very often we don't. I mean, I personally have admitted a lot of patients, I'm not sure what's wrong with them. And I make up not quite make up, but I pick the best possible. And if they turn out to have something else, well, then that's great, right? Because, I don't have the CT. So for example, one of the main things is that they said that emergency physicians miss a lot of lung cancer. Misdiagnosed lung cancer. Well, of course we do, because I don't have a biopsy in the ED, right?
Right.
Yeah. Anyhow, it just went on and on and on and on and on.
Okay.
Shortages, you guys, nothing new to you, but if you haven't known about it yet, we're seeing shortages of Tylenol and ibuprofen because of the, particularly in the child doses, the child formulations, where there are reports of people coming to the ED just to get ibuprofen and Tylenol because they don't have it. We also hear that there may be some shortages within the ED itself. If you have any information you want to share with me, the FDA is asking us to sort of try to figure out how bad this is and if it's real. So please, again, just send it to me. It's easy, sschneider@acep.org. When I was in Europe this past week, one of the things that's hitting Europe really hard and is starting to show up in the United States is strep A in kids.
Right.
England was particularly worried about a lot of deaths in children in England, and I was sort of, you know, we've had reports of it, but not in the numbers that apparently they have.
Right.
And finally, in their wisdom and judgment, the United States government just passed, as part of that huge bill that passed at the end of the year, to do away with the waiver, the X waiver, and the 3-day rule in the emergency department. Unfortunately, what they have substituted with it is that every individual who every individual is going to have 8 hours of training in opioids in order to get their new DEA. Now, the exceptions to this are people who have finished their training or who have graduated from medical school within the past 5 years, or anyone who's boarded in addiction medicine or addiction psychiatry. But the next time that you apply for the DEA, your DEA, you will have to, I'm assuming that's everyone on this call, you will have to take an 8-hour course, show evidence of an 8-hour course. I have a meeting tonight, this evening, with the administration, with people who are putting together the actual regulations for this, to determine whether we have to take the addiction medicine course, the ones that are coming out from ASM, which is the American Society for Addiction Medicine, or whether we can substitute an ACEP course, because we already have several of those. But so it's good news and bad news. You only have to do it once, but it really sucks.
Hey, Sandy, so the other thing, I was just curious, you know, about when you do talk to them, just make sure I understand what alternatives could be there. Is it a set 8-hour course you said, but like, for example, every couple of years I have to, to renew my license in Florida or in this state or whatever, I've got several states, I have to take another, you know, one of these things about a use of, you know, prescribing and, you know, all those kinds of issues, and about opiates and so on, in counseling and so on. So I have several of those under my belt. So is there a time frame, or does it have to be done after a certain date? Can you combine and show evidence that you took it? And does it have to be category 1 or, you know, ACEP or AMA or whatever? All those kinds of things are kind of like to know.
That's unclear at the moment. The way the law is written, it sounds like it's going to be, you have to take the specific addiction medicine course, I'm assuming for a fee that goes to them. But again, I'll know more this evening after this call. And there is a 180-day. So for those of you who may be getting your DEA like next month, you have 180 days before this goes into effect. But if you're getting your DEA anytime after June, you're going to have to show, again, we'll know a little bit more this evening, but you're going to have to show this specific 8-hour stuff.
Now, this is where it gets even more complicated when it comes to EMS. So, for example, David, maybe you can address this, but we have all these, didn't you have to have a different DEA number maybe for every fire station, or how do we handle it in Texas, for example? Then I'll ask other people. Do you have to have a different DEA number for every station, or for that at least part of your job as well? So do you have to double dip on the training? I don't know if you heard me or not. David, are you on by any chance? May have had a pop off. So anybody else want to answer that?
I can ask. Yeah, Jeff, do you know something?
Yeah, we certainly used to. We used to have a different DEA registration in our name, but for each physical bricks and mortar location. Fortunately, we don't have to do that anymore. We can have it in the organization's name, and just one of them.
Okay. Anybody else have that issue that we had previously in Texas? There where you have to, assign a lot of different CEA. So in other words, if a physician is responsible, or that'd be a good question that Ray's responsible for other areas such as, and that we just gave you an example of what they used to do in Texas, where you had to have one that'd be like, you'd have to take 40 or 50 courses, right? So I think if it's the same person, even if it's a different DA number, they can get credit for the same thing, okay? Same individual. If someone
That's the same here in Milwaukee, Paul. We have separate ones for individual and agency.
Okay, so for different agencies as opposed to fire stations is what we used to have as a distribution site. Okay, so but yours is agencies, correct? So for example,
right, ours is under one brick and mortar though. But yeah, that's correct.
Okay, good. But let's just say you had different agencies, then you might have, let's say you had 7 agencies, then you would have yours and then the 7 agencies as well to do. So we want to make sure it's not duplicated. That's the point, Sandy. We just want to make sure it's not duplicated and you have to take it over and over again for a different DEA number that you're doing. Okay.
I'll absolutely ask that. As you can imagine, this is somewhat complex. And, nobody really knows, what this is going to look like.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, and then I know you have to get up, but is there a time I can call you later? Because you were asking me for a MOU and it doesn't exist. I'll explain that later. And then I want to talk about, there was an ASAP Now thing that was going to come out, hadn't come out. So I was just curious about it. So I'll just call you later just to ask those questions.
That's
okay.
fine.
Is there a good time?
All right. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to get off.
But is there a good time is what I was saying.
Yeah. And I'll email you.
Or you call me. Okay. Okay.
My schedule, even as we speak, my schedule has been getting populated today. So for whatever, everyone has found out I'm home from vacation and I'm.
So willkommen, okay, from here. We'll have to have you tell us about your Germany trip next time, okay? All right, good. All right, thanks a lot, Sandy.
Sandy, before you get off, I don't understand how you can suggest that the federal government would pass ill-advised legislation. That's beyond me to comprehend. Yeah.
I didn't mean to say that. I meant to say it was absolutely stupid legislation. But
this is recorded and it goes publicly, right?
and John is now enjoying having the ability to say this.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and my other comment will be, unfortunately, it's the DEA that's responsible for establishing these regulations, and the DEA is historically not known for working well with federal or civilian partners. They kind of decide what needs to be done and then do it regardless of the input. So Sandy, your conversations with them will be extremely important.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this is the role that addiction medicine and addiction psychiatry played in this, because they are clearly the winners. And not only are they exempt, but they're going to now control access to this education, which is going to be short, but every physician who wants to provide any controlled substance, including those that may be in other schedules 2, 3, 4, etc., will have to take this training. And again, I can't imagine it's going to be free. And if it is free, they'll have a huge grant to provide it for free. That's my personal reflection.
I'm Sandy Schneider and I approve this message. Okay. All right. Well, great. Thanks, Sandy. It's great to see you. We missed you. So it's really good to have you around. So, which is good. All right. Well, then let me move over to John Kramer because I wanted to do that. And John, hey, so anyways, great to have you back on again and so on. Hey, in the meantime, how's everybody? How's how about Taylor and Oliver? Are they all doing well? Have you been in contact? Or made any travels?
Actually, they're going to be up tomorrow evening to spend a couple days. So,
oh, good.
Yeah.
Hey,
it'll be the first time they've seen snow.
Oh yeah. Now, have you got? I know you're living. If I remember correctly, last time I knew you were living in Annapolis, but didn't you have a place in Atlanta, like near the Jersey Shore or something like that? Am I wrong? Or I can't remember that.
No, actually, the Jersey Shore is Rick Hunt. We've moved back to Michigan.
Yeah.
We're on the other side of the state that Rob was referring to earlier.
Oh, okay.
And had a fair amount of snow. It was almost 3 days straight of snow. Only ended up being a couple of feet accumulation, but we did have Mike Seidel from the Weather Channel broadcasting for 2 days from Holland because of the
That's right. You're in
the
Holland. That's
lake
right. Okay,
effect.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. So you
Things
do
went
gotta-
pretty well. We had one ambulance go off the road, no injuries, and a fire truck that was blocking a multi-vehicle accident was struck, but no injuries associated with that. So it worked out okay.
All right, got it. Anything you think you can report from the world of NHTSA that you're aware of, or anything we should know about?
Not much new from NHTSA. They had the Federal Interagency Committee on EMS meeting a couple of weeks ago. Those updates should be on the ems.gov website, hopefully shortly after the first of the year. And just on a more somber note, Susan McHenry, who was a EMS specialist in the Office of EMS for 20 years, after she'd done 20 years as the state EMS director in Virginia, passed away about 10 days ago.
Okay, God, and she was a contemporary. She wasn't really that old. Can you say why or what was it about?
She was, I think, 72 or 73 years old and had been in declining health, but I don't know specifically why.
Okay, got it. All right, well, too bad. That's going to bring over another somber note, and that's why I put that old Lang Syne in there on my working agenda, which we never even came close to, by the way. Is AJ, can you tell us a little about Bobby Halton? And I will say that I just got to know Bobby this year. And the reason why is because he was running the program for FDIC, and they had inadvertently apparently left out the Eagles presenting there like we've done for the last whatever number of years. And it was, he called up and said, no, we want you to do it. He had a really great plan. He set up something really good. He says he loves the Eagles. He comes to the meetings. And I said, oh, well, I felt guilty because I didn't know him really well, but he's apparently a strong force and a good guy. And he was great for me to work with those couple of times when we made phone calls. But unfortunately, we lost him last week out of nowhere. AJ, you want to say something about it because you were the one that alerted me about that.
Yeah, he was my supervisor, and for all of the Eagles, for me to have the first time a fire chief as my supervisor should ring a bell with people about the struggles that you have in making EMS a top priority. But Bobby was very conscientious. He was a really hard worker. Anybody who's ever been in his presence knows that he just had that aura about him. Great guy, great firefighter, did great things for FDIC and was a big supporter of the Eagles as well as the Gems games and a few of those other things. So he'll be greatly missed. He survived a horrible bout of cancer, and he did that by excessive exercise. And in the end, I think the exercise is what got him. He collapsed while on a treadmill. So leaves behind 3 beautiful sons, one who's a decorated military veteran, and his wife. So he'll be missed.
Yeah, I understand. It must have been, I can't think of a worse thing that a son walking in and just find his father dead and that on the treadmill or, whatever. And that must have been just, especially at this time of year, it means a lot more. And it seems to happen under that thing. So I just don't know what to say, except that it just was heartbreaking. Hey, John Kramer, did you know him at all or anybody else? Jim Augustine was going to make some comment, but he's traveling right now and could not get on with us today.
Only very peripherally, Paul.
Yeah, but what I heard from AJ just now is exactly was my impression. I only had 2 interactions with him, and he was just fantastic. And then so I'm going to probably make it, since I am going to run I think a fairly lengthy Eagles session this year at FDIC in Indianapolis, whenever it is in the spring, I think, or is it March? I can't remember anymore. But in any event, what I'm going to do is I'll make sure we honor him at that time, and and have a moment of memory for him. So that'll be good. Thanks for letting me know, AJ, by the way, and I appreciate it. Then what's his friend's name? Was in the Atlanta, Georgia area? David something. Who was that? Do you know what I'm talking about? Because it was Jim.
David.
Say again?
Jeff Frankel is the managing editor for GEMS.
Okay.
We'll probably have more contact with now.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm saying here, they just said Josh Hartman jumped off. I'm just looking at the note here from John, from Glenn. I see that Joshua jumped. Is he okay here or up here? I think so. That's where he's from. He's the what hey AJ, what's Josh's title with he's like a vice president at HMP, right, which runs EMS World, correct?
Yes, he is. He's a VP.
Okay, got it. And then Scott, I just saw you're going to run. Yeah.
And he lives in the New York, New Jersey area.
Okay, got it. All righty. Well, sadness. That's all I can say. So, all right. Well, this is a small cadre, but it's actually been fun today to talk to everybody and have everybody have a chance to talk. I think this was really pretty good. So next week we'll be getting together at about again at 3:30 Eastern and 12:30 Pacific time. John, anything to report before I let everybody go? Anything to report from the Pacific Northwest in terms, or actually, let's talk a little bit more. But you already talked about that, but about any infectious disease things we should be aware of. And now, I think now that COVID's gone, is there anything else we need to do?
Say that tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Let's see. COVID is basically down to, I would say, community levels here. I'm watching the Chinese outbreak very closely. Just to give you an idea, most of the, I guess number one, information is very sporadic, as everybody knows. Number two, that the current variant that's of concern is the BF7. Which is a BA5 variant as well. And there's a BA 5.1.27 or something else like that. So there's two variants. Just an example, the BF7 has an R value of approximately 10 to 18, much more closer to 18. And just for reference, measles is an 18 as well. So it's not surprising that the waves of the Chinese society are. My concern is the basically development of a variant strain that's a super strain, given the population of China right now.
Right.
What was
it? XBB or something that was in?
Yeah, it's an XBB is a variant of BA2, I believe, but it's a BF7, which is actually on the radar in the United States and maybe in Glenn's neighborhood here as well. So it's in the United States right now. And whether it's more infectious than BQ1 and 1.1, this alphabet suit's driving me crazy sometimes as well. Influenza is dropping as well. So that's good news.
Yeah. Hey, John, I think that a lot of people got vaccinated and it worked very well. Then there's the people who didn't get vaccinated or didn't think it, and then they got sick and, whatever. And maybe we passed through that. I hope that's the case. Hey, John, the strep A that we've been hearing, she was reporting it today, but we've been hearing about for the last 3 or 4 weeks from our friends overseas, especially in Ireland and UK. They were saying it was associated with flu. Is it associated with just anything that people have and it's a super infection on top of other things as well, or is it just flu related, do you think?
No, I think it's on top of everything else. Strep A has been associated with RSV too as well. We're not in Pacific Northwest. We're not seeing it. Our RSV is dropping fairly dramatically, and the other one is that there have been like 17 pediatric deaths, and there was on the news a young mother who was healthy marathoner died of flu as well. So the match for the virus is of the vaccine for the virus is very, very good this year.
Yeah, you do guys. Sometimes you guys see very strange things up there in the Pacific Northwest. One of my favorite things I first saw, I never heard about or trained about in medical school, even though I was in California, was to get up there in Seattle and they had cutaneous diphtheria. I'm going, what's that, right? So
yeah,
that's right. Is that still around there, by the way?
Frankly, we have not diagnosed it. Probably we have seen diphtheria, but it's usually in our houseless population.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm learning a lot of different vocabulary words,
Yeah.
like we come up with a thing for a domicile or a
Yeah.
houseless, okay, that kind of thing, right? That's right. Unsheltered people. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So that was a good, speaking of which, that was a really terrific presentation last week from, from Steve Sanko. It was really great. So, let's see, I was trying to get, Scott Gilmore on, but we missed him, but we just got joined by Ray Fowler. Ray, you have anything to report there, friend?
I am sitting out in the woods on a beautiful day here in Western Georgia in my cabin.
Oh, good.
I was reading an interesting article today that it is a research article based upon, and maybe y'all were covering it before I ducked on, but it was about giving a drug that is ACE2 receptors that allows the COVID to bind to that.
Yeah.
And once it binds to it, it eliminates the COVID from circulation. And apparently cannot, according to this article, which was in Science Advances, cannot be mutated against. Sounds like famous last words, but
yeah, right.
it was an interesting read. I was wondering what John would think about that.
Send me the article, but the ACE2 receptor is fairly specific, Ray. But the problem is that you never try to outthink or outsmart the virus. The virus is way too smart for that. And historically, that's the case. Like the zero COVID policy, with due respect to our Chinese leadership, it was pretty stupid. It was very good for the first 3 to 6 months, but very stupid afterwards.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks a lot. So Ray, anything going on? You're in Georgia, but how long ago did you leave Dallas?
Oh, I've been gone for a week. I got to get back to work for the weekend.
Well, good.
Looking forward to it. And as the Georgia Bulldogs slaughter Ohio.
Yeah. Okay. It's the Ohio State. Just want to make sure
the Ohio State.
And then we have TCU versus. Are both games on Saturday? By the way,
I don't know.
Okay, got it. So we'll see. All right. And then Ray, I got an email yesterday saying that about an Amazon thing. Did that come from you? It said,
yeah, that was from me.
Okay, I want to make sure that it wasn't some scam thing, but that was fantastic. Thank you. So thoughtful of you. Thank you so much.
I sent it to Amazon so you can buy some, deodorant and underwear and things.
Yeah, because of that, right? Exactly. When I was going to give it to my bride, so that's probably how.
I'll give it to you.
But thank you so much, then. It was great that night. We had dinner together. We had a fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's do it again.
Brand new place in Dallas.
Okay, good. I was, and by the way, I think we got to tell you about the upcoming grandfathership, right? And then look what I got I got to show you one of the presents I got for Christmas was this one. You know how Corey always calls me the Godfather, so I got this new one here. It was the latest thing they said.
That's funny. That's cute.
So all right, well, good, Ray, and just great to hear you, and you're well. And I'm going to call you afterwards because I want to find out what the latest news was that we talked about before. Okay, so
well, I don't mind sharing it if you want to take 10 seconds.
Yes, please go ahead.
For those of you who don't know, I've got renal cell cancer, metastatic, and I'm on chemo. I'm 6 months in. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Liver mets. I'm having repeat scans every couple of months, and my repeat scan last week showed continued tumor regression size in the left kidney where the lesion is. Not much change in the liver, and chest CT didn't really show much. So far so good. I feel good. I'm taking my pills like a good boy. I'm a good patient.
Tell them what you're getting. Most people think about traditional chemotherapy, but tell them what you're getting.
I'm getting cabozantinib, which is an angiotensin inhibitor, and a tyrosine kinase receptor inhibitor. And I'm also taking nivolumab, which you see on commercials on TV all the time. It is a checkpoint inhibitor. It's called immunotherapy.
Yeah.
And I really had a pretty low side effect profile. I've had some skin rash and things, but otherwise doing pretty well.
That's
so thanks for asking.
All right, good. Well, that's good news for me. It's the best present I've had so far. So I'm glad to hear that. Although my grandchild, by the way, is going to be called Beau. We did get that announced, Beau, so which is kind of cool. So I'll have to introduce you to him in 6 months. Okay. So I'm hoping we'll all be there. So it'll be good. All right. Well, thanks. Let's see if I can wrap up the call, but Mark, anything to add from your end since you're on? Mark Conrado? Nope, maybe not. So, Roger, anything to add from?
No, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay,
Couldn't
yeah,
get
go
the
ahead.
mute off fast enough.
Yeah.
Actually, we've had some of the similar problems, not so much with dialysis, but a lot of our home care agencies are strapped. So we're getting a nightly influx into our EDs of people who are on home ventilators, other things that, other medical devices that don't have attendants. So these home agencies are literally telling people to either take a private vehicle or call an ambulance to take them to the emergency department so they can be taken care of overnight. Okay. And we're seeing at least a half a dozen a day come in this way, which is frustrating since we're of course bed strapped, and usually we just park them in the ED overnight, and 7 a.m. they get shipped back to their homes.
So just as an FYI, for those who are not familiar totally with the Minneapolis system versus St. Paul across the river, is that Minneapolis runs usually on a hospital-based system. The hospitals, and then which hospital do you work for, and what's the ambulance service called?
So technically, I don't work for any hospitals anymore. I'm a private contractor, but I work at North Memorial and Maple Grove Hospital, part of the North system. Yeah. But used to be medical director for North EMS, and which is about half of Hennepin County.
Right, and the Hennepin County Medical Center has that allocation, done on the southern end, more of the southern end, right? Is that right?
Right. They cover pretty much city of Minneapolis, except for a small slice, and then several of the southern suburbs.
Now, is this a problematic, or helpful to have a hospital-based system, in your opinion?
It's interesting because if you the hospital-based systems are now starting to pull away from some of their commitments to first responders as far as training, instruction, etc., which is interesting. Yeah. And what I'm doing now is working with several other physicians, and we're picking up those first responder agencies and doing their training and their medical direction.
Cool. Okay, got it. All right. Yeah, it's always an interesting aspect of that, because you never know where it's going to happen. On the other end, if you got a really terrible fire chief, that could be a problem as well. So there's always pros and cons on everything. But I was just curious to know, what your experience was. So Roger, let's go to you, and then I'm going to go to Paneet.
Well, greetings to everybody. It's always an honor to be on the call. People were talking about veterans a little earlier. Actually, I'm in my 22nd year as the medical director of Montgomery County Fire Rescue, about a little bit over 1 million folks in the jurisdiction, and Maryland's largest. And I've been sort of reelected every 4 years, exactly along the presidential cycles, because the drop dead end of an RFP cycle, you can renew up to a certain point, but you've got to recompete. And I guess there's no term limits, thank God. And so I've been able to make a career of it with being elected or reelected a total of 6 times.
You didn't need anybody to storm the Capitol or anything, right?
No, it's just a question of recompeting with this huge packet every single time I reapply. I had mentioned a little bit earlier when we were talking about wall time, about one of Maryland's tools is the direct to triage, used as an alternative transport destination, i.e. the waiting room. And I always thought that we could make better use of that, and our numbers had been starting kind of sluggishly at about the 3.5-4%. We're really up. We've more than doubled that. So it looks like for rank and file medics, the idea of using the direct to triage criteria that we have and that the state of Maryland has been a helpful thing. So
just for anybody who may not know, what's a directed triage?
So earlier in the pandemic, there was a proposal in our protocol review committee that there be a criteria based or operationally based ability for when our units arrive at the hospital, that we can have the turnover occur so that the patient is left at triage and the unit can go back in service. So initially, Montgomery County had a triage nurse-based but wider inclusion criteria that was dependent upon the triage nurse's level of comfort. And then the state also put in place a criteria-based directed triage program where if the patient met certain vital sign criteria and physical finding criteria, they could be left at triage, and it would be up to the EMS operational program, the actual municipal EMS service. So Anne Arundel and Howard County, Maryland were the pushed for a criteria-based program and started using it. Initially, it was a little sluggish, and I think it was hard to get the word out that was a viable option. But over time, we've been able to see, using our Power BI database, similar than Ben Weston was talking about in Milwaukee, we've been able to get those numbers up closer to 9 to 10%, which is where I kind of thought the average lowest acuity patient was. And so that allows us to put the units in service more quickly and more directly with leaving the patient at triage. So that's a Maryland protocol now, and Drs. Chismar and Delbridge are pushing that tool statewide.
Where's Dr. Delbridge located nowadays?
So Dr. Delbridge is essentially one of Dr. Bass's successors. He is the executive director of MIMS. Tim Chisbar is the state EMS medical director who succeeded Dr. El Corda.
Got it. Okay.
Those are names. And the other thing in Montgomery County I've been noticing is, we often have cardiac arrest rates, that are about, for 1 million people, about somewhere but averaging between 3 and 4 a day. I've noticed that there's been an uptick of cardiac arrest during this cold season. But what's more surprising is the number of dispatched full assignments for house and building fires. There seem to be more of them coming across my pager system than cardiac arrest. So we're in a very, very heavy fire season. And also, we've had a couple of weird things that hit the national news that I hadn't chimed in a little while, but we had the plane crash into the electric wires. That was a evening, overnight long rescue mission that hit the national news. And then we had another explosion in a townhouse. I was worried about the fact that it might be sort of infrastructure related because we have a lot of old infrastructure. But the last one, where the explosion was actually almost visible from the dispatch center and went to 2 or 3 alarms, was actually a suicidal person who was fiddling with some sort of explosive and blew up his own house. So that also,
like you've had an interesting holiday season for sure.
Yeah, this is so we're also having an uptick in our fire season in Montgomery County, but
all right,
but yeah, 22 years. It's been a long time. Thanks.
All right, let's look over to Paneet. Paneet, can you tell us anything to report out of LA County? I see that. Sorry, you don't have Clayton, but tell us what you got.
Most of the same that everyone else has discussed about. The only thing of interest I thought I would mention on this call was, we work on the squad-based system, so we have private ambulances respond to our calls. With increased APOT times and decreased staffing, we're finding increasing delays during surge times.
Mm-hmm.
Now, normally, the problem is the culture before COVID was that that they expected an ambulance to be there. Ambulances were always there. They expected it. Nowadays, with delays, sometimes our people are staying on scene waiting for an ambulance, and they may or may not ask for an ambulance ETA until it's like 5 or 6 minutes later, and they still realize an ambulance is still not coming. And so they're staying on scene way too long for certain patients who are in very severe critical condition. And really, the best idea would be just to grab and go. So we're working on notification systems to identify when the system itself is in a significant state of delay. So they may make better choices about when it's time to just put them in the back of an engine and just haul to the hospital.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks then for the update out there. I wanted to, since you were on, I wanted to include you and Roger into it. So let's do this. I think it's time we can break up the bunch, but I do want to say anybody's here if they want to present a specific topic sometime. I'm just sometimes on Monday night, I'm just making stuff up or calling 1 or 2 people that had mentioned something to me, because I always like to make sure we get around. I hope this was helpful and useful to everybody as we've done it over the past year. And if there's anything I need to change, please let me know. But this has been actually kind of fun today, just getting to hear from everyone. So thank you very much. And some good discussions too. All right, so if I have any objections, anybody else want to make a comment or say anything else? If not, I'm not going to see you guys again till next year. Okay. So welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Next Tuesday, but at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12:30 Pacific. And stay tuned for another great year. We had one extra one of these, I think, in January last year. And so this was the 53rd installment. So because I do the Florida one and this one, I get 2 hours every Tuesday morning of CME, which is just amazing, category 1. So I've done well over 100 hours. And just for this alone, you're getting over 50 hours of CME if you're able to get onto this. So we have to thank the people over there at the Memorial for making that possible. I think everybody saw in the chat that the CME code for today was 15353, 15353. Hey, although I just thought about something, Angus, I never called on you. Is there anything you want to report on or talk about or come out of the meeting we were at before? I apologize. I just totally, it just had a mind, slip. Anything we should know about?
No, thanks, Paul. No, just had a good discussion, year-end wrap up with all the Florida folks. Looking forward to seeing everybody down here at NAMSP in a couple of weeks.
Remind me next week on the maybe the Monday next week in the evening, especially say, Paul, remind me to talk about NAMSP tomorrow. Have you and Peter both comment on it. That way we can and tell us a little. You could talk a little bit about the logistics and what goes on and what kind of fun things happen there in Tampa at that time of year. Okay, so
sure. Yeah, if anybody has any questions in the meantime about where to make their reservations for dinners or drinks or whatever, feel free to reach out. It promises to be a fun week.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's good. It's fantastic. Well, right, where the convention center is, and then right across the harbor from that, there's a whole series of, I remember, restaurants over there, right? Like one was what's it called, American Social or something like that, and few in that area there. So there's a lot of places that are really close by, correct?
Yeah, it's right in the downtown area. There's a couple of different areas locally. Right across that bridge is American Social and other few places, and then directly across from there is actually our hospital, Tampa General. So it's all right in the area there.
How's the cuisine there at Tampa General?
It's at least 2 Michelin stars.
Right, good. All right, guys. I'll see you next week, as they say. So welcome back, my friends, to the show that ends next year. All right. See you later. Thank you very much, and bless you all. Okay, see you later. Bye-bye.
Happy New Year.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year to you, Glenn. Oh yeah, poor Glenn. Happy New Year, right? Welcome to Times Square. All right. Yeah, I can't wait to be there, right? He said so sarcastically, right? All right, see you later, Glenn. Take care. Bye-bye.